Okay, so the way that we've got the presentation structured is I'm going to start off at the beginning, kind of talking about the very basics. What is a PROS plan? Why do we have it? How does it function? And then we're going to launch into each of the different chapters of the PROS plan. And there are, well, we'll get into how many chapters there are, but there's kind of a slide on here that highlights each of the chapters, takes a look at the contents of the chapter, and we are not going to go through every single thing that's in there, but we will have highlights from each of the chapters that we want to touch on. And the intended purpose tonight is really to provide some information, gain some interest in what we've done here in the PROS plan, and hopefully spark some excitement in you to go online, take a look at the plan in its full capacity, and then provide some comments and feedback to us. And whether those are, hey, you made a mistake here, or hey, I think something is different, or even, hey, this is really great. We want to hear all those comments, good and bad. So please provide us comments back. So what is the PROS plan? So PROS plan, the PROS stands for Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. And it ultimately boils down to being it's a 6-year strategic plan. We are required by the state of Washington to do an updated PROS plan every 6 years. It's a state of Washington requirement based on the Growth Management Act, those requirements that are put on local municipalities, cities, counties, etc. But what does it do? So the next 3 bullets up there, it ultimately is a guide for policy development and policy decisions, and that is where these goals and objectives come into play. And then it also ends up as a guide to park improvement and capital projects, which is the other item there that we've got printed in the back. You can go to the next page. So what is it for? As I mentioned, it's a requirement to the Growth Management Act, so we have a requirement there. It is also a requirement by the state of Washington's Recreation and Conservation Office, or RCO for short. They have a huge grant program that is available to a lot of parks and recreation and other municipalities to apply for grants to do improvements to parks, park facilities, land acquisition, etc. In order to be eligible for those, you're required to have a valid, an updated, and approved PROS plan. And lastly, it's just darn good practice. Not necessarily to have a PROS plan, but the process of what we're doing and how we developed it is really important. We go to the community, we ask a bunch of questions, we get feedback, we get comments, and ultimately we create these plans, these goals and objectives which drive policy based on the feedback we're getting from the community. So this is important because we are here to serve you, to provide parks, facilities for you. And we want to make sure that we are doing it properly, we are doing it the way that you're telling us to, and that helps us remain relevant to the community that we're serving. So what's in it? PROS plan, you'll see 6 different items up on the screen. This is what is required through the Recreation and Conservation Office with the state of Washington. All PROS plans are required to have a goals and objectives section, inventory analysis, public involvement, demand and need analysis, the capital component, and then adoption, which is more the action than a section, but it's got to be adopted. So, okay, so this next slide replaces the picture with this pretty cool graphic on the right, and I nabbed that out of the PROS plan itself. It is pretty neat in that it kind of shows you have this overview, it leads into inventory assessment, which leads into public involvement, and so forth through this very structured steps, and you end up with plan adoption. That is not how this process looks. This next slide is more akin to how things function when you're developing one of these plans. You have a lot of things going on kind of simultaneously. A lot of engagement happening at the same time that you're doing your facility analysis to look at your condition assessments of your parks and your recreation facilities. You're asking the public for their opinions. You're engaging with staff. We're talking with our elected officials. And ultimately, all of this data that we're consuming and we're hearing from and we're developing leads into two primary outcomes from the PROS plan. And that are the two green boxes up there. We end up with the goals and objectives and a capital facilities plan. And so if you look across the bottom of the screen, it's a little hard to see here, but across the bottom is kind of, if you were to turn this into a math problem, you would end up with your public involvement plus your inventory analysis plus your demand and need analysis. Ultimately comes out on the back end with developed goals and objectives and a capital facilities plan, which helps direct the capital projects that we put into play and we construct. So this is, well, might be easy to read, kind of, sort of. This is a graphic representation of how we took all of these different things that were going on and had them moving kind of simultaneously. And if you were to walk across the bottom, we had 3 surveys over the last year and a half, reaching out into the community, asking a variety of different questions to try and gain information and feedback. The first survey that we asked was our kickoff. And this was really focused on asking the community, how do you use your parks? Which parks do you use? What type of recreation facilities do you use? As well as questions like, what barriers prevent you from using your parks or going out there? Why don't you use your parks more often? And even this kind of negative information can help inform our department to develop plans and projects to try and overcome some of that so that we are being more inclusive. We are improving access for a greater amount of the community. Coming out of the first survey, we ended up with 4 themes that you see across the top there in that first box. Safety and access, trail development and connectivity, recreation facilities and programming, and preservation and conservation. If you were to kind of whittle down or organize and group the different comments and responses, those are kind of the primary themes. So what we did was use those 4 themes to help inform survey number 2, so that we were kind of staying in alignment with what we were hearing from the community. Survey number 2 was a really interesting one. In that it had and we'll get to this specific piece, it had a really interesting application that was map related, and you not only got to provide your answers, but you also got to draw on the map where you would like to see whatever your answer was to the prompting question. Coming out of survey number 2, we refined those themes, which you see in the second box there. They're very similar, but slightly different. And then those themes helped inform survey number 3, which was taking this information, how do you use your parks, to what do you want to see in your park system, to specific capital projects, identifying certain things at certain locations. At the same time, and this was like over the course of many months. I mean, we're talking, I think, probably 6 months, because I think we started in August, and then we did, actually it was more than that. We did the 3rd survey in March, I think. So it took a while. While all that was happening, it kind of in the background is all this stuff that is in that arcing line across the top. That's when we were doing the park system analysis, which was taking a look at our existing facilities, our existing parks across the county, and determining kind of what shape are they in, you know. How old are they? Are they still functioning? Where do we have backlog of maintenance, etc.? We held stakeholder interviews. We had different, and this is laid out in the plan, we had different categories of park user groups that we pulled together, and we conducted one-on-one interviews with the consultants that we used to help facilitate the process. We held public open houses. The open houses were in sync with survey number 2. So not only did we have kind of an electronic way for folks to participate and draw on maps, we also had paper maps that we were in this room for one, and we had them laid out on the table, and we had people with markers, and they were answering the questions and drawing right on the sheets of paper on the maps there. So different ways for us where we're trying to get information, surveys, public open houses, the stakeholder interviews. We did some presentations across the county to raise awareness of what was happening. We held a staff workshop with the Parks Department staff because, man, we've got, our park staff are out in the parks every single day. They've got a different focus on what they see out there than our park visitors. And so it's really important for us to hear from our own staff too. And then we conducted or we pushed out a youth survey as well. We did this through the school districts, North, South, and Central. Our response rate wasn't so great, but we're trying to get the youth vote. So we want to hear from you. Please write your comments and let us know. All of this kind of collectively led into the development of the PROS plan, of those goals and objectives, and then the specific projects, the CIP component. So, okay, so this slide you will see repeated through here, I think 5 or 6 times. It is kind of the cover slide that we're using to introduce the different chapters of the PROS plan. So other than the overview, which we didn't do a specific slide on the presentation for, the next chapter is inventory and analysis. All the bullet points that you see on the left-hand side there, those are all of the subcategories that are within this chapter. So these are all the pieces of information that were analyzed, that are called out. They all have some sort of descriptor that is in the PROS plan. I'm not walking through all of that today. But this is to basically just give a primer of a lot of the evaluation that went into the development of our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan. Nonetheless, within this chapter, there is one item I do want to draw attention to. We have a park classification system that we are proposing some changes to. So on the left-hand side here, you will see it says current. These are the current park classifications that we are utilizing and have utilized in Kitsap County Parks since 2012. We have community rec complexes, heritage parks, legacy parks, etc. What we are proposing in our PROS plan is to migrate away from those and begin using the column on the right. The reason for this is that these are more widely recognized and used by parks and recreation organizations, agencies, nationwide, as well as within the state of Washington. So these are also the park classifications that are used by the Recreation and Conservation Office and the state of Washington, those same organizations that provide grants, provide us opportunities. And so what we want to do is kind of align the language that we're using to when we're describing our parks so that we're talking the same language with the RCO, and when we're doing data comparisons with other municipalities, we're aligning the data correctly. Out of all the places I've worked, and I've been across the country in Michigan, Colorado, Arizona, worked for feds, state parks, local municipalities. Never seen partnership parks as a category before. So when we try and parse that out when we're making comparisons or we're applying for grants, it doesn't really fit into a good bucket. So we're trying to propose making some changes so that we're in alignment with more normal operations. Moving on, public involvement. So the next chapter here, this is and The bullet points on the left in this slide, in this chapter, in this presentation, these do not represent all of the different subsections of this chapter. This is the one slide that's a little bit different from the others. Instead, what we put up here were all the different touch points that we use to gain that public engagement. And so you will see up here some of the things I've already talked about. The Survey 1, Survey 2, Survey 3 are up there, the open houses, the stakeholder interviews. You will see a list of the different categories or groupings of stakeholders that we pulled together and did the interviews. The tabling event, the youth survey, and the different presentations that we have done. Multiple presentations to the county commissioners, multiple to the Parks Advisory Board, including last night. We had a couple presentations in front of the tribal coordination meeting, and this is kind of agency to agency, and then did some presentations to some local advisory community boards as well. So we have, for me personally, getting public involvement, getting the community to participate is the most important part in this development. Obviously, the analysis of our existing facilities is important and taking into consideration staffing and budget and et cetera. But none of that matters if we're not hearing from the community, if we're not making sure that what we are proposing to do is what we were told that the community wants us to do. So, I hope that throughout this process that you have participated, and when you do take the time to take a look at the pros plan, that you will see that we captured something that you told us. So that's the hope. So within the context of the public involvement, I'm going to walk through some of the results that we heard for the survey 1, 2, and 3. Not going to go through every single question, but just kind of some highlights so you can get a feel for the type of questions that we asked and some of the information that we got back. So the first survey we had out for 5 weeks. We had almost 1,800 respondents. It is never as many as I want, but pretty good. Most used parks in the county based on the respondents that we got, so not like a perfect tally of who's going everywhere all at once, but based on the survey respondents. North Kitsap, Port Gamble, Point No Point, Silverdale Waterfront, and Central Kitsap and Newberry Hill. So a lot of representation here from the north end. We're not in the north end today, so please fill out your comments and get involved so that we are hearing from you too. And there's a lot of don't get me wrong, there's a lot of capital projects listed that are very much important and take place in South Kitsap as well. So the type of activities that we heard from the community, regardless of which park they were at, number 1 and number 2. We're utilizing nature trails, open space, and doing walking, hiking, biking on trails, on pathways. This is a very common theme in Parks and Recreation. You see this exact same type of answer across the country, across the state, and even when you whittle it down to local agencies, we are getting the same type of results too. This is the type of thing that can help us ensure that the decisions we're making, the allocations of money for the type of projects we're putting are in alignment with what people are doing, with what they're using. So next one is kind of that flip question, and this is barriers to use. So what prevents you from utilizing your parks? And the top 3, which you can see by the bar graph, are significantly more responses than the others, are unsure of what parks are available. Well, that's on us. That means that our department's not doing a great job of getting out into the public and marketing our parks and letting you know what's out there and what you can do. We heard about security and safety concerns, and this kind of runs a gamut. There's a lot just kind of wrapped into those couple words, but that is something that we will have to take a look at addressing. And the last one is needs restrooms. This will be a common theme that you will see throughout. Restrooms, restrooms, restrooms. We have heard this a lot. Those comfort facilities are important for folks. Our county is really big and spread out, and we have some really ginormous parks. And so when people go to the locations to visit, it's important to have the comfort facilities so that they can stay and enjoy themselves. So those 4 themes, kind of touching on them real briefly, kind of mentioned them earlier, but the access and safety and some of the kind of sub-bullets that came out that lead into what access and safety concerns are. Number 2 is the trail development and connectivity. Number 3, rec facilities and programs. And you can kind of see what we're hearing. Requests for more rec facilities, pickleball courts, support for more youth and adult sports facilities and programs, requests for more soccer fields. I think I was waiting for that. Indoor basketball courts. We were just talking about indoor facilities not too long ago. So we're hearing a wide spectrum of interest, of desires, of need for different types of facilities. And number 4, nature preservation and conservation as a primary theme. If you're not aware, our park system is huge. We have 11,400 plus acres of parkland across the entire county that we manage. Of that, about 80% of it would be considered open space, undeveloped, natural areas. It might have trails through it, but it does not have ball fields. It does not have picnic shelters. It does not have bathrooms. It does not have those man-made developed facilities. And so there is a different type of focus, a different way that we need to approach that and manage that versus your developed parks, your more traditional types with playgrounds and basketball courts and picnic shelters and such. So very important for Kitsap County. Moving on to survey number 2, we had this one open for 6 weeks. 422 respondents. So we had a big drop-off in respondents. Could have been the time of year. Who knows? Maybe we didn't do as good of a job kind of promoting it, or we didn't hold the open houses in the right location to attract the right folks. But we did get responses. It did help move the needle on the PROS plan. And ultimately, it's one data point. Well, now 2 data points because we survey 1, survey 2. But this is all important information, and we aren't like solely resting 100% of our decisions and our projects based on just what we heard from the surveys, but it's an important piece of information to help inform what is important to the community. We add that in with a lot of the other stuff, the facility assessments, the demand need that we're hearing from the community, and it all starts to kind of add up to give us a more robust picture of what the community is telling us. So some results from survey number 2, and this one is the one that had that map component. So following those themes, and just kind of, I think I have a couple slides for each theme. You will see, and I just talked about the conservation and the open space component, so one of our primary themes, and you can base that. And this was not a multiple choice survey. This was open-ended, and so this was a lot to evaluate, to absorb. And it was open-ended questions, so people could write in whatever they wanted. And then they had the opportunity on the map you'll see over there to draw on the map either electronically or when we had the open house in person, specifically where they would like to see whatever it is that they put down in the answer to the prompting question. So other comments that we heard related to conservation, and of course you will also see that, and the map is confusing in these slides, and that's because it is every single answer on top of each other. So, when you peel that apart, then you start to line up the answers with the specific locations. And of course, we got some responses where they just circled the whole county and said, I want this everywhere. But some of the important items you'll see up here, we need to do removal of invasive plant species, support for our stewardship groups, increased funding for native plant restoration, increased environmental education for residents and visitors, equitable access to our county parks, and that ever important, balancing the wildlife habitat protection with the human-based recreation activity. How do we do that? We, especially at Kitsap County, with all those acres of open space, it's really important for us to make sure that we've got, a finger on the pulse of both things happening. We are here to preserve big chunks of open space, and we're also serving the needs of our community when it comes to person-based recreation opportunities. Another theme, the trails and the connectivity. This one was about drawing trails or connections on the map that you would like to see that don't exist or need improvement. And we heard a lot. We even heard stuff that was outside of our park boundaries, that was about sidewalks and bike lanes and safe routes to schools. While that those solutions don't necessarily land in the Parks Department, it is important that we are still a through point for the county and for the other departments. And so this information does get sifted over to Public Works, to the Non-Motorized Transportation Committee, so that they can understand how the community is what the community is saying too. This one is desire for trailheads at our parks, and you'll see the kind of heat map where a lot of the responses came in. A bunch at Coulter Creek there in the south, our second largest park in the county at 1,550 acres, and then a few hot spots up north around Port Gamble, North Kitsap Heritage Park. Next theme is moving on to the access and safety, and another heat map up there with identifying where specifically a lot of the safety concerns and responses are coming in for, with syncing those up with specific parks in there. And safety improvements. So this one kind of leads into those physical improvements that you would like to see at a park to make something safer, and identifying the specific parks where we heard the comments come in. We have a whole section of the capital improvement plan dedicated to safety improvements. And then the new recreation facilities, disc golf, pickleball, soccer fields, and off-leash dog parks. We heard a lot of throughout. Those are kind of the four primary common themes. So those are on there. More other park amenity type facilities, and we show up in that common theme, restrooms, and a whole slew of parks that people want to see improved restrooms at. And a lot of those are our large parks where people go and they spend hours there walking on the trails. And it is unfortunate that we don't have developed facilities there. So we're taking that in and making sure that those end up on our capital improvement plan. Picnic areas and benches and opportunities for passive use. Survey number 3 was kind of the coalescing of those two and turning those into specific projects. We ticked up in responses. We're over 1,200 here. This was a very short survey. It was only 9 questions long. I think 7 of those questions were specific to capital projects, and then we had a couple others in there about how you would want to prioritize spending a finite amount of money, and a couple other things that were not capital related but important for us. So results from this one, and following those same themes. So across the top in the top left corner, connectivity and access is the theme. And then this one in that red box, which you can't see real well, but on the middle on the left, where it says full park system, all regions. So this was a multiple choice question. It did have an open-ended comment box at the bottom too. But basically, we built out a laundry list of park improvement projects based on what staff knew we needed, as well as what we were hearing from the community, and put those together and basically said, what are your top 10 trails, trailheads, parking lots, and access projects you would like the department to focus on over the next 6 years. And you will see a lot of the answers there. Newberry Hill, parking lots, trail connections, and so forth. And it runs the gamut, north to south, banners on there a couple times. And then next slide, recreation facilities, amenities. I actually have 3 slides talking about this, and that's because there were so many recreation facilities to call out that we had to divide them into north, south, and central. The other thing to show about this slide or to talk about is we're only showing the top 10. There's a ridiculous amount more that fall below that. We couldn't put everything into a slide, but it is all captured in the pros plan. In the appendices, you will see all of the answers and all of the kind of rankings and number of votes that they received. There's a lot in there. We could create careers for so many people just to do capital projects if we had the time and the money. So next slide, please. So top new facilities desired, again, in that recreation facilities category, and this one is South Kitsap. So this is our home here today. We've got Banner Forest, renovation of Long Lake Park, improved restrooms near South Kitsap, back to the restroom theme, restrooms at Anderson Point. Horseshoe Lake Park, renovate that park. It is old. We have some outdated facilities there and need some investment. And you can see some of the other answers. And like I said, this is not representative of 100% of everything, but it's kind of the top 10 responses we received. Moving on to safety. We are now back to the full park system. Recreation facilities was the only one we divided up. But the top 10 safety improvements. And there's a ton on here. Not all of these necessarily rise up to be a capital project. Some of these could be maintenance improvement projects that we're able to do with in-house staff. And some of them are a little bit ambiguous, like improved safety measures to reduce crime. What exactly does that mean? Well, it really is going to depend on the specific location and specifically what the challenges are there, but it could mean safety lighting. It could mean putting up cameras, which we have started to do in some of our parks because we have experienced a lot of break-in, vandalism, and theft. It could mean, trying to create partnerships or improve partnerships with the sheriff's office to just create an increased presence in some places to just discourage certain activity from happening. But it's really going to be site-specific, and so this does not drill down to that level, but it does recognize that there are safety concerns that we're hearing from the community, and we need to target what that is and help make that happen. The conservation and resiliency theme, again, full park system. These are specific projects related to improving our natural resources and our open space landscapes. This one, we actually had fewer projects to share out, and in large part that is because we don't know a lot of the needed projects and improvements that are out in the 80% of our parkland that is open space natural area. Why, you may ask? Well, we have not had a dedicated component of the Parks Department to manage our natural spaces until just a few years ago. We did some reconfiguring of the department and created a natural resources division of the parks, and they're still growing. We are still creating it, but they will be focused on managing these natural resources, and as they evolve, this project list will increase in size. For now, this is kind of what we have up here. The next slide is very similar, kind of, sort of. It's also conservation and resiliency, but instead of being focused on projects specifically, like capital projects, this one was more focused on system-wide priorities. And so this one was more about developing policy, developing management practices about how we manage those open space and natural areas. And these answers helped evolve into some of our goals and objectives that we'll touch on in a little bit. So next chapter, demand and needs analysis. We are now back to kind of the bullet points of those sections and subsections within the chapter, the different types of information that are called out in there as part of the evaluation. And in this section, we're kind of highlighting what you see on the bottom left there, which is LOS. So LOS is levels of service. These are metrics or thresholds that local communities develop, states develop. The NRPA, the National Recreation and Parks Association, actually has these too, where they take a look at targets. This isn't a perfect measure of like the size that your department should be or how many trails you should have based on your population size, but it does help provide some data points to say, how are we doing? And if you go to the next slide, up here is a comparison. On the right-hand side is the NRPA and the state guidelines for what they determine or what those averages are across the country for county park systems based on these park classifications that you see on the left. So they don't have standards for everything, but some of them they do. So we've got neighborhood parks, community parks, regional parks, all have a specific guideline or target. And these are not meant to be taken as like the gold standard, like every single community should be fitting within that 2 to 3 acres per 1,000 population to have neighborhood parks. That's not exactly what this is. It is just a mechanism to provide a comparison for us. The NRPA, the National Recreation and Parks Association, actually used to have set standards that they wanted all local agencies to follow and try and target and adhere to. But not all communities are the same. Not all communities need or desire a pool or want a splash pad or need 1,000 acres of open space. So really, the NRPA has kind of backed off of that as a guideline and said, well, here's kind of averages across the country, but really what you need to do is do what we're doing here, engage with our community, find out what the community wants, and then that's end up what we target, because that is making sure that we are meeting the needs of what we're hearing from the community that we serve. We do have local levels of service metrics too. These are actually adopted levels of service metrics by Kitsap County, and they live in the county's comp plan, the comprehensive plan, which is this huge gargantuan oversight plan that the county just got approved in 2024. This is developed by Kitsap County, and these metrics that you see on the far right-hand column where it says Kitsap County adopted LOS, those have existed for 12 years. So 2012, is that 12 years ago? 2012 is the first PROS plan was done in 2006. They had LOS metrics in that, and then the next 6 years when they updated that in 2012, they changed those LOS metrics to what you see on the screen here. Those have not changed since. So they were carried forward from 2012 to 2018, and then from 2018 to where we are today. And within that context, they have stayed within the county's comprehensive plan as well. We are not proposing any changes to the levels of service metrics in this PROS plan, but we do recognize that they need a little bit of evaluation and probably some tweaking at some point in the future. We are not in a position to take that work on right now, so we are just marching forward with existing and previously adopted LOS. But what this does is it provides us a marker to take a look at how we are doing based on these levels of service metrics and our population growth. And so one item to note here is when you take a look at this column that says existing acres or miles, and then you see all those acres, and yeah, I said we only have 11,400, but you see over 23,000 up there just in the first category alone. Well, the way that the LOS is written in the comp plan is it is not just the county's open space. It is the counties plus non-county open space that lead into this level of service metric. What that means is the county Parks Department is not solely responsible for providing all recreation opportunities, all open space opportunities to all the residents of Kitsap County. This is a conglomeration of county parks, City of Bremerton Parks, City of Poulsbo Parks, Bainbridge Island Parks, DNR, state parks, WDFW land, and I don't know if GPC land's on here or not, but maybe it will be in the future. We are part of a bigger family of land management organizations that provide public access onto these properties that help us sync up and target, are we meeting our own metrics that we have defined for providing the appropriate amount of facilities and access to our community members. The next slide tells us that. Over the next 20 years, so you'll see the first column there, 2024, and the next one is the projected population growth in 2044. Based on our current size and current calculation of all of these different metrics, we'll be short on two of them in the future. As our population grows, so should our means of providing these different types of parks and park amenities to our residents, to our community. So based on this, natural resource areas and community parks, we will fall slightly short. So this is just another data point that can help inform us that as we move on over the next couple decades, we may need to target some land acquisition for preservation or the development of community parks. So that is kind of how this can be used at the planning level for communities. So moving on to the last two chapters, and I am talking way too much, so we'll get to a Q&A session at the end here. But these are basically, we got the goals and objectives. Right after this is the capital improvement plan. As I mentioned at the beginning, these are basically the two outcomes from the PROS plan. So you have all this data, all this analysis and evaluation that goes into it, and basically what you're getting out of it are goals and objectives. And as I mentioned earlier, these help drive, develop, and formulate policies, management decisions, and kind of how we function on a daily basis. And we've got 6 of them in here, and each 6 is like this big. There is a lot packed into each one, but then they are broken down, and we'll walk through each one. So the first one is promote a sustainable park system that fosters opportunities for both active and passive recreation, encourages healthy lifestyles, safeguards natural habitats, and preserves and enhances significant environmental and historical resources. There's a lot in there. You know, you're not going to get all of that done in one annual work plan. This goal is broken down into those 6 objectives that you see up there on the screen, because it means a lot to different types of function. And within each one of those objectives, we don't have room for it on the screen, but in the plan, for each one of those objectives, there's like 2 to 6 actions that are called out. So those are opportunities or ways that the Parks Department can implement those objectives, which helps us lead to achieving the goal. Also on the bottom of the screen there, you'll see goal focus and the Parks Department program. This doesn't live in the plan, but it's really information for us to kind of explain a little bit further as to what these goals are for, and then within the department, how they align kind of with our department structure. So this one is vast. It is huge. It is not specific to a type of program or operation that we function. And so we consider it system-wide. This is stuff that is big and would cover all of our program and operational divisions. And so because of that, we sync it up with administration, which is also that big overarching function of our department that oversees natural resource program, maintenance and operations program, events and marketing, and planning and capital. It covers the gambit. Goal number 2, develop and implement natural resource management plans to protect biodiversity and cultural resources, establish buffer zones and wildlife corridors, adopt sustainable land management practices, and preserve cultural heritage sites through interpretive signage, education programs, and collaboration with local tribes and cultural experts. Again, there's even more packed into this one. This one is very focused on natural resource management of our open space and falls within the wheelhouse of us doing natural resource management and then kind of that new natural resources division that we developed for our Parks Department to kind of focus on that 80% of our Parks Department. Goal number 3 is to integrate sustainable design into park planning and development to minimize environmental impact and enhance resource efficiency by incorporating green infrastructure, adopting native landscaping, and implementing energy efficient practices. This very much speaks into Carmen's wheelhouse as our new parks planner, as well as the capital development component. So as we are building new parks, as we are creating new recreation facilities, this goal is basically telling us we want you to do that stuff in a way that is very green and sustainable while still meeting, the needs of the community. And you have the different objectives and a ton of different actions in the plan. Goal 4, enhance visitor amenities and services to improve accessibility and overall experience in county parks by upgrading trail signage, expanding parking and accessibility features, and implementing technology solutions for better engagement. This is another one that I would consider very overarching. It does not solely live within a specific program area. It really speaks to how the department across all of our different program areas provides and interacts with the community. It speaks to how we design facilities for new construction, how we carry out events as a component of our operations and programming, and how you design it, you got to maintain it, so maintenance is up there too. It's kind of another overarching one. Goal 5, enhance events and athletic facilities by upgrading and maintaining infrastructure, implementing efficient management operations, and exploring revenue-generating opportunities to attract regional events and support local recreation programs. We have a very large events programming component to our Parks Department. We operate the county fairgrounds, the pavilion, which is the largest indoor event facility north of Tacoma on the peninsula. We have community buildings in multiple parks. We host tons of mountain bike race events in some of our parks, as well as just a ton of stuff. So events and how we function is really important. Not to speak of, also speaking of athletic facilities. We need more soccer fields. We need to fix up the soccer fields we have. We need more baseball and softball fields. We don't have any pickleball courts. So there are needs there too. That kind of all falls into this category here. Last one, goal number 6. You build it, you better maintain it. So this one is very specific to park maintenance and operations, where we want to ensure high standards by establishing standardized management practices and effectively allocating resources to sustain park facilities in natural settings. Lots of objectives and important information that says, we are going to do our best to maintain these facilities so that they have long longevity, so that they last a long time, and we are doing best management practices for how we function and how we maintain our parks and open space. Those are the goals and objectives. One of the primary outcomes of the PROS plan, and super important in that, through implementation that will lead us into how we make decisions and developing policies. And the last one, capital improvement plan. Those are the bullet points that you will find within the PROS plan, and we're going to walk through some of the different categories that are called out in the printed piece of paper and this specific table. Not touching on 100% of everything in that table. What we really tried to put on the screen here are just those projects that are being looked at for the 1 to 6 year time frame. I want to tell you there are some items in here that fall off of that that are not within that 1 to 6 year time frame that are related to soccer field improvements. For those folks in the room, I want to hear from you. I want you to fill out these comment cards and tell us we need to change that. So we still have an opportunity for edits to the PROS plan, and we want to make sure we get this right. But where we currently sit, and before we get to the list, we did create, this is new to us this year, we created a category list for the different types of capital projects. The reason we did this, and rather than just have this enormously long list of projects, by categorizing these into different types of delivery, different types of purpose, it will help us better balance the amount and the type of products that we determined that we're going to carry out in a specific time frame, so that we're not doing all soccer fields and missing the mark over here, that we're not doing all land acquisition and forgetting about soccer fields, that we're not, and so it gives us the ability to track what we're doing and try and better balance it for improved equity of investment into the different facilities and so forth. So what we have up here are pretty basic. There's land acquisition, park access, which really speaks to parking lots and trailhead access. Park amenities are really kind of like one-off type of improvement. Like a few years ago, Brian, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Brian was our former maintenance and operations manager at Kitsap County, and he led a project to install a new playground at South Kitsap Regional Park. That is it's one amenity that went into the park. That would be a park amenity project. You're adding a picnic shelter, you're adding a playground, you're adding a soccer field. It's just one thing. Athletic fields or athletic facilities kind of speak for themselves. This runs, because we know we have a ton of athletic needs, and so we wanted to make sure we capture that in their own dedicated category. Same thing with event facilities. We have a ton of event facilities that we manage across all of our county park systems. We want to make sure that we capture that too. Trails, pretty self-explanatory. Natural resources, kind of talked about that a little bit. Those type of projects that are there to improve and enhance the sustainability of our natural areas. And then we end up with number 8, this park development category. What this is, and actually there were a couple on there that we took a look at coming out with some of the top 10 votes. We had redevelopment or park development project at Long Lake. Horseshoe Lake was called out also, and then we have some other parks in some other areas. This is basically a category we created that includes multiple categories of 1 through 7. So if we do a park project that is going to include multiple amenities and or land acquisition, we would kind of put that into a park development category, and so that's what that is there to categorize. And then the other category is basically anything that doesn't quite fit into 1 through 8, and we do have a few of those projects. One of them is underway right now, and that is the beach and shoreline repairs up at Point No Point Park. We had an incident back in 22, early 23, where we had overtopping and we had flooding there, and we had a lot of degradation to the beach, and we are still today working on repairs to that. That's not really a planned project. That's more us responding to an incident. It doesn't really fall into those planned categories, so it ends up in as an other, but still super important. So the list. This first one is trails, trailheads, parking, and access. So you see we're still kind of following the same theme as we categorize these. This is trails, trailheads, parking, and access across the entire county. So not specific to any north, south, or central region. We have parking lots on here. We have improvements to trails to make them ADA, improve accessibility, ADA compliant, so kind of meeting some of the different types of input that we received and we're hearing from the community. Now we're moving on to the rec facilities, and we do have this one in North South Central, and this one is representing North, and we see picnic shelters, we see a new parking lot, but it would also include a playground, picnic shelter, benches, more playgrounds, fishing pier, pickleball courts, disc golf courts, and renovating fishing cabins up at Norwegian Point Park. Central Kitsap in District 3, restrooms, renovating a park at Wildcat Lake, fairgrounds and events center, so speaking to our event facilities, adding a new park there, but also improving our special event buildings, adding ADA accessible and inclusive playgrounds. We currently have none in our entire park system right now. There's a huge segment of the population that we are not serving. So we are recognizing that, and we'll work towards fixing it. Okay, next one. This is South Kitsap here. Banner Forest adding restrooms, so following a lot of the same themes. Long Lake is that renovate the park, which also includes restrooms. South Kitsap, improve restrooms near the playground. Horseshoe Lake, another park renovation project, and a variety of other things. Pickleball courts. Wicks Lake Park, for those who may or may not be aware, we have this really amazing park called Wicks Lake that we are bound to the Recreation Conservation Office to develop, and in 20 years we've done nothing. So we're making sure that that gets on the list. We need to do something there. We are required to do something there. Okay, safety projects and enhancements. This goes back to countywide, so not specific to North, South, Central. And I actually have 2 slides on here because they're all important. But again, not all of these necessarily rise to being a specific CIP project. Some of them might be lower lifts with installing cameras or working with a local enforcement to help out or doing something else. So there's this page and the next one, and then on to conservation and landscape resiliency projects. We have, we have Coulter Creek on here, we have Howe Farm, and I think the others are kind of north and central. And then the last chapter is that plan adoption that again is more action than anything written there. But where we're at today, and you can go to the next slide, is this is our pathway to approval. This represents all the different dates and timings of things that are before us.